This somatic sequence can help to sometimes relieve that tightness that's happening in the pelvis. The psoas connects into the spine down through the pelvis to the leg, and it can sometimes be really tight, and the brain doesn't know that it's tight. It thinks that it's at its full length. So by doing what's called pandiculation, where you tighten a muscle and then relax it and let it stretch a little bit, and then tighten it again, and then let it relax and stretch again, that gives the brain information from the muscle that, oh, maybe actually it can be a little bit longer. So this set of sequence will go back and forth where we're contracting a muscle and then we're lengthening the muscle. So for this, come down onto your back. We're coming into constructive rest. So your knees are bent, your feet are on the floor. And if you did the pelvic tilts with me before, when we're doing this, we're going to have our low back on the ground. That's where we're going to start, is pushing the low back into the ground. And the idea here is throughout the entire sequence, until you're releasing the pelvis, the low back needs to stay on the ground. At one point, we're going to be bringing that leg a little straighter, a little straighter, a little straighter. If you get to any point where your low back pops off the floor, you've gone too far with straightening the leg. So only go as far as you can keep the low back on the floor. All right, so let's start. So find neutral. If you need a couple of pelvic tilts, go ahead and do your pelvic tilts. They're very comforting for me. Okay, and then if you want to bring your hands behind the head, you can clasp them. We're just going to be doing just a little baby crunch. It's not something super intense. And we'll start with the left leg. So from here, start with the pelvis in neutral. And then the low back comes to the ground. Lift the shoulders and the head. Lift the left foot off the ground about an inch or two, keeping the low back on the ground. Release the shoulders and the head down. Release the foot down. Release the pelvis to neutral. Low back to the ground. Lift the shoulders and head. Left foot a couple of inches. Release shoulders and head, keeping the low back on the ground. Extend the leg a little bit. Release the heel to the ground. Release the pelvis to neutral. Low back to the ground. Lift shoulders and head. Lift the heel. Release shoulders and head. Extend leg. Release the heel. Release the pelvis. Low back to the ground. Lift the shoulders and head. Lift the heel. Release shoulders and head. Low back staying on the ground. Extending the leg a little bit longer. Release the heel. Release the pelvis. Now really pay attention. Low back to the ground. Lift the shoulders and head. Lift the heel, keeping that low back on the ground. Release the shoulders and head. And as you start to straighten the leg, if you feel your low back lifting up, stop there. Release the heel. Release the pelvis. And if you have a little more space, you want to go one more. Really low back to the ground. Lift the shoulders and head. Lift the heel. Release shoulders and head. Extending the leg. Again, low back staying on the ground. Release the heel and release the pelvis. And then let go of the exercise. You can come back to constructive rest if you'd like to kind of check in, see how the left side, now that you've just done that, how does that feel against the right side? And it's okay if they feel exactly the same. We're just checking it out. You can also extend your legs out long and just see if there's, do you feel any difference there on either side? Okay, when you're ready to do your second side, come back into your constructive rest. So again, the same thing. You're always trying to keep that low back on the ground when you're in that engagement. Anytime when you're extending that leg or even lifting the shoulders and head, the low back wants to come off the ground, then you've gone far enough, and that's okay. You're good. Okay, so neutral with the pelvis. Hands behind the head. Low back to the ground. Lift shoulders and head. Right foot an inch or two off the ground. Release shoulders and head. Release right foot. Release the pelvis. Low back to the ground. Lift shoulders and head. Right heel. Lift, release shoulders and head. Extend right leg a little bit. Heel to the ground. Release pelvis. Low back to the ground. Lift shoulders and head. Lift right heel. Release shoulders and head. Extend right leg. Release heel. Release pelvis. Low back to the ground, shoulders and head, lift the heel, release shoulders and head. Paying attention, keeping the low back on the ground as you straighten the leg a little more. If it wants to pop up, back off, release the heel, release the pelvis. I think I've got enough space for one more, but if your low back is popped up, don't do one more. Really, low back to the floor. Lift the shoulders and head. Lift the right heel. Release shoulders and head. Low back stays on the ground as you start to extend the leg. Release the leg to the floor. Release the pelvis. And then you're done. So checking it out, I like to have my legs a little bit, have them straight so I can see what that feels like. You can bend your knees and bring your feet to the floor, kind of adjust around into your constructive rest. Check that out, see what that's like. And if you want a couple more pelvic tilts, or you like a little windshield wiper legs, you can add a little windshield wiper legs. So I hope that the sequence was of help. Just remember you're trying to keep that low back on the ground, so you're engaging those abdominals until you consciously release to let go of the low back. Thanks for joining.